Yeah, welcome again to our weekly webinar, Stopping the Violence. Uh, Today is July 17th, 2024. We did have a guest speaker to come on again, and it so happened his schedule did not permit at the last minute. So we're finally getting him on. He is originally from Cincinnati. He's a law officer and has a wonderful testimony to share with us about how he became a police officer, especially being raised in a community, which we would call an at-risk community. But by virtue of one man stepping into his life and speaking words of wisdom and support while he was a young lad, he eventually grew up and became a police officer. So we look forward to hearing his impressive story. So he could not come on, so we're going to have one of our previous speakers to share with us again, and he has been on with us maybe twice, but always what he shares is innovative. We're here because of the fact that we started off with understanding or with the mission to stop gun violence. And yes, that is one of the categories that we do discuss, having too many guns in our community. How do people get guns? Should guns be, something that people can easily access or not? However, we realize it's not only the guns, but there are people who pick up the guns. And why do they pick up those guns? They cause harm to their fellow brothers and sisters, or fellow citizens. And so today we have Brigadier because he has played a very intricate role in dealing with, violence, and how do we begin to change those communities to help reduce violent behaviors. And his name is Brigadier General Arnold uh, Gordon Bray. He's a retired U.S. Army veteran with over 3 decades of service. Is dedicated to curbing crime and violence in America. As the owner of the ANGB Consulting LLC and consultant for threat emulation, he leverages his extensive leadership experience in strategic communication and combat operations to address issues of national interest. Passionate about transforming outcomes for underserved and the represented, as he calls it, and undervalued and the disenfranchised communities. General Bray actively engaged with a nonprofit organization like 360 Cradle to Careers, focusing on STEM education and innovation networks. His military background, including commanding forces in Iraq and contributing to the African operation, uniquely positions him to advise on strategic, operational, and humanitarian concerns. With a wealth of experience in modernization and experimentation, General Bray is committed to embracing community safety and promoting diversity, veterans' needs, and education across the nation. Very impressive um, background and resume and bio. We're glad to rehear him. He's always very innovative and very intriguing on things that he will share with us today. So if we can start from that, EJ, just his beginning of his talk, that would be great. Because I've already introduced him. They can together come up with a national solution to helping curb the violence in America and crime. Well, thank you so much again today. We have a person who's not a stranger to us. He has been on previously, and he did so well. We just thought that it would be great to have him on to have like a part two. And we have our dear, illustrious, great friend and a great leader, General Gordon Bray, Arnold Gordon Bray. And the last time he spoke on, and I think he continues to speak on, and I think it's very appropriate title, and especially dealing with the communities that are at risk and the communities that we think of that are more prone to crime. And the topic, I like the topic, it's called The Underserved, the Underrepresented, Undervalued, and Disenfranchised. So I would like him to tell you, General Bray, I would like you to share your background with us first as the preload of who you are and what you're going to say to us in your brief comments. And then after that, we would like everyone to, chime in, and if you have any questions or any statements or something that he said previously that you wanted to be embellished upon, please do so. So General Gray, welcome back. It's great to see you again. And please, the floor is yours, and Happy New Year. Good to see you, sir.
Reverend Oliver, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Can you hear me well?
Absolutely.
Well, good. Thank you so much. First of all, for those who haven't heard me speak before, there's an element in our nation that previously was defined as Black and or brown with hyphenated definitions of names, African American, Latino American, Latina X, etc. But I am not sure, and I have concluded that while the culture and some of the ills of slavery and oppression have still been intertwined in our culture, from literally those who support the idea of someone being born better than another, which by the way is absolutely anti-American, and I will talk about that in a moment. But there are people who still are bearing the scars of that past. And while I'm at it, for those of you who saw me at the Pirate Patch last time, I had scars had my patch cover my eye because I had shingles. Well, that's past. But just like the scars on my face will be there for a long, long time, in spite of anything else that I may do, they're just reminders of something that has happened that has marred who I am. But I get past it. I press on, but it does not negate what's there. So there's a group of people in our society that still, and I say a group, there are communities of people that are still suffering from being underserved, underrepresented, undervalued, and disenfranchised. And I call it U3D. And I call it that because while it principally still is of Black and brown people, the reality is those communities have become mixed. The world is becoming a melting pot. And some of those communities still are what they are. And as part of that, what you have is you have the people who have been oppressing and the people who have been oppressed, and then the kids of those people sometimes, and oh, by the way, others pass on some of the pains that they have felt. They're not real, they're real, but they pass them on. And some folks who haven't even experienced it, they're now embracing it. And so what happens is those communities are they're out there. And by the way, like I said, they're mostly, but if you've ever heard the group Eminem, he would actually fall in this group because he did not necessarily know or see himself differently as part of that community. Now, two things can happen to folks like him. They can be absorbed, they can elevate, they can be people who do not recognize the privilege that their complexion has given them, and they will have to deal with that. But he's still part of that U3D community. It's the same one that elevated him out because of the music that he enjoyed, the culture that he embraced, and so he became that anomaly. Had he not done that, he also becomes someone who's susceptible to people who are on the other extreme, who will tell him that, or who could have told him that, see, this is an example of where someone is trying to take away the privilege that you would naturally inherit. And so if we don't look at these communities as communities, we're going to have problems, because these communities, they are inherently challenged, but they're like everybody else. Maslow's theories of needs makes them want. They want to get those things. They want to be well fed. They want to be clothed. They want to be warm. They want to be embraced. And they also become breeding grounds, especially if there's not two parents in the home. They are breeding grounds for places of crime, because people want to be part of something. And sometimes they got to embrace. I didn't mention this the last time, but I did a podcast with a gentleman called Big U. He is one of the leaders of what had become the Crips. As a 10-year-old boy, he was a Boy Scout. His mother could not afford scouting, and there was nobody putting their arms around him. But guess who did? The Crips. And they took a person who had a different level of promise, who had a different level, because his leadership and genius is undeniable. He ended up having to go to jail for almost 20 years by being part of that community. By the way, and to be fair, he is respected still in that community, because now he's also part of the rap community, because that's part of what happened. So but he still reaches down trying to change some of the young kids from being in that and use his example, but some of them miss the example that he's trying to prevent them from being part of, and they see him for the other side. Because again, Maslow's theories of needs says we want to have things. Hill Harper writes letters to a young brother, and he tries to capture the fact that the average person who deals in drugs or crime, they'll make $1.76 an hour for their lives, based upon where they could be, but how short their lives actually become. Hard for that to be understood, but he tries to bring that reality to those who will listen. And I think we may even have to be in this period where we tell ourselves we have to think like starfish, like the kid on the beach with the starfish. You may not be able to save large groups, but that one starfish you throw back into the ocean, you saved him or her. This topic of violence in America, at its core, it has a root. It has a root that goes back to those communities, and those communities have something that goes back into these ideas of slavery. And by the way, let's not spend too much time there, because I think it's important to understand that it was legal all over the world for a while, and then in the 1800s, early 1800s, the western parts of the United States, western parts of Europe, start to walk away from it, and we were late to the game, and we ultimately had to have a war to conclude it. And by the way, anyone, and I watched Nikki Haley on TV try to step back from it, but anyone who says it's not, I offer you two things. One is look at the actual Articles of Confederacy. It says to be a member of the Confederacy, you had to accept slavery. That's the first thing. The second thing that it also said was this. In 1860, the richest state in the United States was the state of Mississippi. And it had defined that slavery was worth, in $1860, $6 billion to their economy. $6 billion. And that's why they followed South Carolina into the Confederacy. But similarly, for those who are just a little history, is that one is that they also have to understand that, you know, that Lincoln really did not necessarily want to end slavery, but by the end of the war, he knew that he had to make the end of slavery an issue. And so that's why he worked very hard to have the 13th Amendment. Later on, it was refined because of all the other things people did. But this is, I don't want to get too far into history lessons, but this is important because this is something that has its roots in people trying to assert dominance over another human being. But since it ended, we in this new nation, and I'm going to hit this other part real quick, new nation. We're not like any place else in this world in modern times. All of the countries in Europe used to have kings and potentates and things like that. John Adams was very clear in defining this as a new nation because one of the things we took religion, not faith, but religion out of a requirement in our country. Faith stayed there, always stayed there. The belief in a higher being, an absolute being. I had a lawyer that used to always say, if you got a watch, you got a watchmaker. And so we recognize that, but we also let people figure out how to do that part, how to practice that. All of the other countries used to have one faith. There was a homogeneity that each of the other states had, but the United States became not a melting pot, by the way, a tossed salad. We wanted all the parts to come into this place, and you get to keep your identity just as long as you understood you're part of a salad. We are all made better. We taste better because of the other person. We are elevated by what they can bring to the fight. That's what we did differently. And so now I walk us forward a little bit. This idea of violence, a lot of the violence that has become catastrophic is based upon the use of a weapon. I shoot, I'm pretty daggum good at it. And I enjoy or have enjoyed marksmanship. Before, there was a purpose behind my marksmanship. But I grew up because my dad was a hunter and I wasn't. My next time actually handling a weapon was because I was a soldier. I was an infantry airborne ranger, and this goes to your question or your comment about my background. I spent 35 years as an infantry airborne ranger, and I, you know, for lack of a better definition, my job was to close with and destroy the enemy, to go through doors that others wouldn't go through, to put myself and my men in harm's way, and try to execute the security actions of our nation. As I got older and less capable of going through the door myself, it was to plan ways to support our nation's interest. And on the continent of Africa, I did travel around sharing and talking about our national interest. And I used to always tell them, America's interests are about America, Americans, and American interest. And most will pull back because that sounded very self-centered and very nationalistic. But I reminded them that under Jimmy Carter, the United States was the only country that made human rights a national interest. That means willing to go to war for it, willing to put American blood behind the idea of human interest, human capital. That's significant because it speaks to who we are as a people. It speaks to the evolution of our commitment to individual rights being central. It speaks to us not trying to form this homogeneous bond of faith, language, complexion, ethnicity, family, but in fact, behind an idea that all men are created equal, are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. And from that idea, we would then go forward with building a nation. And now I go to that piece I talked about very briefly. I said the tool behind what people think is an individual right, it's not an individual right. The Second Amendment is not an individual right. It starts off with the words that says, as part of a well-regulated militia. Now, a well-regulated militia. Now, let's pull back just a second. First of all, it's an amendment. What does it amend? It amends instruction to Congress. It amends instructions to Congress to do what? How to maintain a navy and raise an army in the defense of this nation. And that's why the well-regulated part is so important. You can't be well-regulated if you don't know what people have or who has what. We didn't have money. We were broke. In 1787, we were broke. So people had to defend, they had to have the right to defend their property. Today, we have multiple weapons that are not necessary for self-defense. Save some of the people who live in the most remote parts of the world. And Alaska, in some cases, meets that because the threats are animals at certain ranges. But at the time, it was Native Americans, it was foreign powers that you may have to get together on. And I talked about this very briefly last time as well. I went up to Boston and outside of it just to look at what a militia would have looked like in 1776, which became the basis for what they were afraid of. One, there was a little bit of concern about the leadership of the nation. But God, we didn't know what it was gonna look like yet. We're well past that. We are the most advanced of the Western world's constitutionally established states now. Only Romania, really, and to UK, but they still aren't there for democracy. They still have the monarchy tied into theirs. We are very different. We are a new nation. And so you have to have this kind of sense of history to understand that one, individual spirituality, families, an understanding of who you are as a people, and the ideas of this nation to begin the conversation of trying to stop violence, to trying to move forward, to getting families back in the game, and to then look at what we as a nation are trying to be. Dr. Martin Luther King calls us the world's great experiment, and I absolutely agree. Do we sometimes falter? Yes, we do. That's what experiment's all about. You're trying to get better, and you're also challenging yourself with examples. You take off an hypothesis, and FDR, and trying to figure out how to stop the slide in economics. He said, we're going to try something. We're going to keep trying to get it right. And a war helped him. But he also kept at his core an understanding of who we were to the world. You go anywhere around the world, and Reverend Allah just came back from Zambia. When he walked into the room, people gave a deference to him, probably because of his cloth, his faith, and also because he comes from America. Because people still hold us pretty high. And those of us who travel abroad ought to respect that. Not become the ugly America, but in fact, recognize that they expect better from us. They expect us to be respectful, to be at a level of intellect or a level of understanding. They expect that from us. And we disappoint them when we don't provide that. We have to do some internal fixes. We do. And what I'm going to try to do now is, rather than preach, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to try to answer questions associated with it. And I'll give you my opinion about the things that I think are very specific and germane to the question that's asked of me. And thank you.
Thank you, General Gray. Gray, your statements and your opening remarks for me was brilliant and appropriate for 2024. Thank you so much. I have just 3 points that I just wanted to bring to attention. That I wanted to ask the audience and brothers and sisters who are on, and to share any hopes or any questions that you had. I think what you have you said last month, and what you said last year, and you're saying now, and the topic, it's really appropriate for the topic, which is the underserved, the underrepresented, and undervalued, and disenfranchised. Another word that I use, and I have used it on this webinar, when dealing with certain at-risk communities, and you had indicated that when America thinks of violence, now we think of the Black and brown communities. When people think of violence in America, that's the first thing they think of. But we know in reality there are different categories of violences that are happening in America, transcendent of your color or your race or stuff like that. But we know the reality still is that when people think of violence, they think of dysfunctional communities. They think of the Black and brown community. So in some respects, you're addressing that. So we can address different categories of violence coming from different communities. But as we're focusing from your vantage point, the areas of the disenfranchised communities that are more prone to the Black and white community, the Black and brown communities, one of the other words that I wanted to add on is appreciation. Lack of appreciation for that trauma. And what we tend to do is like to sweep it under the carpet and say you don't have to go back in the past. But the past continues to haunt us. It's not to go back in the past to bring the area of guilt. And this is why I like your presentation. You were really giving us a wonderful and a beautiful synopsis of where America really is. And for America really is in its ideal sense, then we have to go back and look at that segment of society and why they're so dysfunctional, and they're wreaking havoc in the general community. And because there are some sort of traumas. And there's a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome that you probably read, DeGroy, whatever her name is. She does an excellent job to help us to understand how that trauma is affecting behaviors that we see, that we feel that are inappropriate in society. Next, when you said church and state, and I'm glad you made that reference, and I do a lot of reading in that area, and the beauty of America. You and I probably were from the same lineage. You know, we're probably from the descendants of slaves, but still, transcendent of that, we understand what America really is and what America should be, you know, and that's not holding us back, but it's something that we do see that is a reality, but also America is, the greatness of America is God's season. So one of the things that you did say was church and state, and you made that distinction, and I don't think people really understood that the separation of church and state had nothing to do with faith, spiritual principles, and not at all. It had everything to do with denomination, so what it was, what they were trying to say, we got to separate denomination and state, because the state could not favor one denomination. It had nothing to do with the church. When you look at the church as a faith institution, you know. So I'm glad you made that the distinction, because a lot of people don't know that. And then lastly, human rights. Yes, thank you so much for bringing that. And I can see people's, they draw back on what you were saying, but you were saying that when you go into the essence of America, you find that America is a nation that takes human rights very seriously, and it transcends its nation. That's why we've become, a big brother to other nations, because we will fight for the human rights of humanity. And ironically, the ones who rose to help civil rights or human rights become a policy, even in the UN, was those very African Americans who fought for their human rights that has extended to the world as a policy, as a rule. And so, I just wanted to open those doors, and thank you so much for your opening remarks. And we hear not as a judgment, we're here to look at things, in realistic terms, so we can find the healing points. We can find the healing avenues that are so needed in all communities that we have to heal. And I like your example of Eminem. Yeah, it's very appropriate example, and that you've given. But I don't want to stay on that. I want to open up the floor for others to share their points of some things that they have heard and they would like to ask you more questions about. I see Reverend Darrell Franklin. Yeah, welcome, brother. Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Hey, thank you so much, Reverend Oliver. Thank you so much.
Wow. We're a small group today, but I thought his presentation was quite well-rounded and quite brilliant. And something to re-listen to presentations, and you reminds you of the brilliance that have been spoken on this particular platform. So I know it's just a few of us. I don't want to keep us too long. Anyone has anything to say in regards to that? Again, that great presentation that General Bray had shared with us. We can just say a couple of words, and then we can probably end early today.
I really love his patriotism. It really brings us back to the founding spirit. That is still alive here, and thank God for that.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm always amazed at from sometimes the victim, ancestry of victims, to still have the wherewithal to understand the value of the patriotism in America and what it really brings to the table. To me, it's applaudable. It's real. Yeah. So I agree with you. Too bad our brother Bruce just came on. He missed a great presentation. Anyone else? I know Andrea, sometimes she's working or cannot get on. But Bruce came on a little late. I would love to have heard other people's remarks, but
I'll catch the recording, I'm sure.
Yeah, catch the recording because it's a really a great presentation that General Bray shares with us. Especially, he's looking at the history of America from different vantage point. He starts off with, understanding the significance, people of slavery and how that has affected even today's dysfunctional behaviors in certain communities. We have to really look at that. How is that trauma still, you know, surfacing in its ugly head and causing, then he went into understanding the true value of America, what America really stands for, why America values and are critical to the whole of humanity and to America as a whole, and how do we value that? And that's why he's saying, well, let's look back. We have to heal you just can't sweep stuff under the carpet, like I always say. You can't sweep stuff under the carpet. You got to heal stuff so that America can rise to be, the really greatest nation that it can be even greater. And especially as he quoted Adams, didn't he? In reference to, or one of the presidents has said that, America is is still an experiment. And of course, within the context of an experiment, there's some mistakes you make, but still with this type of experience, we have still the capacity to correct and to recalibrate our situation and make it even better. I think that's basically what he was saying. Is that correct, Nadia?
Yeah. Yes, I wish I would have remembered the exact person. I'm sorry about that. I caught what he said, but I can't remember if he said the person that quoted it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know he said two presidents. No, he mentioned Adams, and then he mentioned one other.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I think so. But anyway, I just remembered the remark, which meant that this is no. It was Martin Luther King.
Yes, that's it.
Who said this was a experiment?
Yeah.
This whole America. So it was good. It's very good.
At the same time, we're also evolving. So just spiritually, we evolve, and so things that we've done or attitude that we've had, can change because we're evolving, and as long as we hold the culture in check to evolve and to those new standards, we'll make it.
Yes. Yes. And I think what he was actually saying is, as you evolve, but you have to look at what might be the impediments that prevents the real evolution to occur.
Yeah, trauma. Yeah. There's people that, we're all traumatized to some extent, and trauma is, you can't go forward with the base of trauma. It's very difficult. So that's
yeah. So it's true, and that's what I was saying. I was saying that there is this is a whole cross-cultural situation in America. We have various types of demographics that there is violence within those demographics, and they're all a little different, but basically when you really look at all of them, there's some trauma somewhere. There's trauma part of the equation, if you would.
Yeah.
So
I will for sure catch the video, the recording.
Yeah, catch the video. It's really good.
I will do that.
Yeah. So it's interesting when he said, "Welcome back." Reverend Oliver just came back from Zambia. What a video or a recording, Nadia, that you picked, because tomorrow I'm going back tomorrow. Yeah. So I took, oh, did he just say that? Was that the time when I just came back? So I'm taking off again today. I don't think of this. That's true. Yeah, that's great. Andrea was saying, yeah. Yeah. Well, we see violence everywhere, don't we? It's just rampant. We just saw what happened to Trump, and these things are inexcusable, behaviors. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how the international world is responding, because I'm getting texts and verbal condolences, and they use condolences from Africa. I have about 4 of them. They send condolences. What they said, we send our condolences to, the people who got killed, but most of all to the attempted assassination of your president. No matter what you think of him, it's just he's a human being. He is the previous president of the United States, and we just feel that that's inexcusable. Those are the kind of messages that I'm receiving. So violence is everywhere, and how do we begin to look at those particular demographics and become a healing platform for that? And only way that you can do that is really we begin to listen. And so these presentations are extremely insightful and significant. Yeah. Any last words, Nadia, or someone, Bruce, as we come to a close?
I'm good. You covered a lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again. You picked the right video, that's for sure.
It's your suggestion. I just follow.
Oh, that's right. That's why I had tried to get him on last week. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
And okay, Bruce, thank you for coming on. And you look at the video. I'd like to get your comments on it as well.
Will do. And thank you
Okay.
for your consistency, and I think just talking about the issues, and I think and hearing different different methods, just different people's approaches to solving problems is amazing. So thank you for creating this platform.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. All right, Andrea, God bless. Nadia, God bless. Thank you, EJ, and thank you, Bruce. We'll talk. See you next week. Hopefully that gentleman, that officer, will be able to come. He wants to talk with me a little bit more in details, and then we'll have him on. God bless you, and take care. See you next
Do
week.
the same.
Bye bye
Safe
now.
and happy and fulfilling travels.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.